So guys, I have this video here from Dreamcore that is called "The Third Edict has changed the course of Path of Exile 2 forever," and it says course corrected in here. It doesn't have a quoting mark, so that means that he thinks that they are going in a better direction now than the direction they were going before. I haven't watched this video. In fact, I went out of my way to not watch this video, to watch it with you guys. But I think he's going to talk in here about how in 0.3 the game is going in a faster direction, in an easier direction. The game is going into a PoE1ification, if you want to say it that way, right? I am not entirely mad about it, because PoE1 is an awesome game that I like a lot. But I prefer if that was not the case. I am a little bit annoyed that right now Path of Exile 2 endgame in the top end, I know it is not that way for everybody, but in the top end, in the meta stuff, your build is not defined about if it can complete the content, because everybody can complete the content. Your build is defined by speed. I don't like that, brother. That is stupid as fuck. So you have to go and complete the map in 30 seconds, and that is a good build. Fuck that, I don't like that gameplay. But hey, I am going out of my way in here. Let's see what Dreamcore has to say in here. I am not entirely doomed about it. Maybe they fix it in the future. Maybe they decide that is the way to go. It is still fun. Hey, let's go. But let's see what Dreamcore has to say in here.
A short while before Path of Exile 2's 0.2 update, Dawn of the Hunt, I made a video discussing how I thought the 0.2 patch would ultimately set the course for Path of Exile 2's future and change the game's direction forever. Because at that time, we just got off the back of a string of smaller patches following PoE2's early access launch, and at that point, the game truly had two different halves. In the campaign, you had the true-to-vision, slower, more methodical combat. The campaign...
I said this in Trice podcast, brother. And I told people think that the vision that Jonathan has about the slow methodical combat is for the whole game, and it is only intended for the campaign. They will allow people to last and to be gods in the end game, because that is the power fantasy of Path of Exile 2. He probably still doesn't want it to be as bullshit as it is right now, but something like it was in 0.1 and 0.2, maybe Lightning Speed was also too bullshit. But it's still fast, it's still cool, it's still powerful, you know. The problem we were having, at least in 0.2, was that, as he's saying in here, it felt like two different games, and the curve of progression was not smooth. It is still not perfectly smooth, but I think that with the introduction of Act 4 and unlocking the trading system in Act 4, the curve got smoother. Because you start weak Act 1, you start getting some pieces, some power, you hit Act 4, you get the trading, you get more trading, and you feel more powerful, and then you enter maps and the power gets out of control. You are more progressing towards the power now, right? And I think that is what they want to do. Maybe I am entirely wrong, but I think that the vision, people didn't understand the vision originally, and now everybody is starting to understand it. You are supposed to start out weak. You are supposed to start out slow and overcome difficulty. But as you progress, you get power. You get powerful and faster. More powerful and faster. Power and fast. Power and fast. Until you become a destroying uber machine in the end game. I think that is the point. That is the point. And stuff that you do at the start, you are not supposed to keep doing at the end. Like parrying. Like rolling away from everything. Like having to combo 7 abilities. You can still do it, but you can also not do it, right? I think, at least that is my interpretation of the vision.
The game was pretty much everything that we had come to expect, from all of the dialogue we'd heard and all of the showcases we'd seen prior to Path of Exile 2's launch. It was clear that the campaign had a lot of work put into refining the experience, which made sense because we know that just 3 months prior to the early access launch in December 2024, GGG put down the idea of finishing the full 6-act campaign and instead rushed to put together an endgame for PoE2. An endgame that, predictably, given the time spent on it, felt extremely undercooked upon release.
It is still extremely undercooked, better, but still bulging. But I don't blame them for it because of what he's saying right here. They rushed it. They did it as fast as they could to not release a game without endgame. Some people say that they would have preferred for them to release the whole campaign instead of having half a campaign and a bullshit endgame, and then you have two things that are undercooked. I don't agree with that perspective. I think they made the correct decision because the endgame, all the bullshit, did prolong our invested hours into the game. If you did the full campaign without the endgame, you have to admit that the player retention will be lower. Majority of people will go through the campaign once. People that really like the game will go through the campaign twice or thrice. And then that is it. How many hours is that? Knowing that the second or third attempt at the campaign will be really fast, not as long as the first one. That is not as many hours put into the game. Now with this endgame, even if it is bullshit, we are putting a lot of hours into the game, right? So it was the correct decision. They knew that Diablo 4 releasing with an endgame, without an endgame, was a mistake, and they course corrected. I think it was the correct decision.
And this, of course, is the second half of PoE2, the much faster paced endgame. It was so different that you felt like you were playing two entirely different games, going from the...
I myself made a lot of videos about this, about having two different game styles, two different games in the campaign and in the endgame. Also, we have to say, and I think this is still the case, before the endgame, we are playing PoE2 and the monsters are playing PoE1. But then, in the endgame, we are playing PoE1 too, brother. I don't know, PoE1 1.5 or something, because we are fast as fuck in the endgame. Well, not we, because I am not. My build is slow. But if you are playing a meta build.
Campaign to the endgame. Monster density was much higher, you were often getting swarmed by monsters that were faster than you ever could be, and the balance of monster types was very off, with some dealing ridiculous levels of damage. But as I mentioned, this was to be expected. After all, just a fraction of the game's total development time had been spent on the endgame. However, 0.2 was approaching, and I believed that this first major update to PoE2 since the early access launch was going to firmly position the game in one direction or the other. Would they stick to their original design decisions, or would they juice up the campaign to align it with the speed of the endgame? Well, truthfully, I was wrong. 0.2 came and went by, and the game still had a complete disconnect between the campaign and the endgame. There was no real stance taken by GGG to go one way or the other, and even in interviews...
I also talked that out, I think I made a video about it. I think my video was titled something like, this is why 0.2 is going to be the most important patch for Path of Exile. Because it was supposed to tell us what was the vision. Do you want to be fast or do you want to be slow? But 0.2, as Dreamcore is saying in here, didn't say much. But I think that 0.3 has been saying a lot. And again, I think that what 0.3 is telling us is that they are going for that progression. That, yes, they are two different games at the start and at the end, but you are supposed to get into it progressively and feel that the smooth curve. And at the start, we didn't have that curve, and they are tweaking it until they get it to the right spot, right?
And Q&As at this time, it wasn't obvious which direction they really wanted to go in. However, fast forward to patch 0.3, and I believe we now know the answer to that question. The Third Edict has changed the course of Path of Exile 2 forever.
This is true, but I am pausing just to say, please, Dreamcore, say the same thing I was saying. I want him to say the same thing. I want him to say the same thing as me, because he's obviously much better at the game than myself. And if he agrees with me, that will feel for me like validation. Like, yes, I said something cool, you know? So please say the same thing. Let's see.
And it's not the direction that I really expected, but many of the changes combined have pretty much cemented the course of PoE2 going forward. It looks like GGG have decided to go with a faster paced game, more akin to PoE1. And in doing that, they seem to have left behind some of the core philosophy of the slower, methodical gameplay that we were shown for years in trailers and demonstrations. And this is echoed in many of the changes in patch 0.3. For a start, we have the new crafting systems.
Okay.
Now, prior to patch 0.3, crafting was almost non-existent in PoE2.
It was a gamba machine. It was identifying with extra steps. But now we went the other way. Now crafting is insane.
For some extremely expensive crafts using omens that simply didn't exist for the majority of the player base. However, in this update, GGG sought to massively improve crafting, and not just in terms of the options available to players with various currencies and omens and essences, but also in regards to when these crafting options became available and when they are actually useful. In Path of Exile 2, crafting is now very much a thing, and its usefulness begins early.
It is. Looking at the currency, I am thinking something that I don't know if they are going to keep, guys. Or maybe they make them rated, right? Or I don't know how they are going to handle it. Because I think that the perfect tier for currency is like OP as fuck, right? And I am talking about the perfect transmutation, perfect augmentation, perfect regal, perfect exalted, and perfect chaos. Not talking about the essences. The essences are fine. Those guarantee you a tier 1 or tier 2 in the majority of cases. Modifiers, affixes. Those are broken as fuck, dude. And yes, I know that a perfect exalted is 2 divines and a half or whatever. Still, it is powerful as fuck. They probably will think that, oh, this is too powerful. I am fine with that, by the way. I do think that they need to let us be powerful, right? Because to be powerful in this game, you have to invest 100 hours. Nobody has time for that, man. Let us be powerful, right? But for the amount of power that they are aiming for, I think that the perfect currency is powerful as fuck. So I hope they don't take them out. Maybe they go for rarity or make them that you can get a tier 3 affix or something. They modify it somehow because they are powerful as fuck, you know. What do you guys think about that?
Into the campaign, with massively improved access to essences, which often allow characters to acquire items with 2 or 3 good affixes early into the campaign, something which previously wasn't doable outside of IDing a random rare drop or slamming lucky modifiers onto your items.
You can get a lot of very good items, of course, nothing crazy, but a lot of very good items without using the expensive stuff. By the expensive stuff, I mean Order of Annulments, Omen of Dextral Annulation, or Erasure, I believe they are called. Without using an Omen of Whittling. Those things are expensive, right? You can get a very good item without using those. Just by using the Exalted Orbs, the Perfect Essences, the Greater Essences, the Desecrated Mods, that they are not expensive, and using, what is the other shit? Homogenizing, the Omen of Homogenization. Using those things, you can get really good items for not that high of a price.
Then there's the new Abyss crafting featuring Desecration, which, similar to PoE1's Veiled modifiers, allows you to add and choose a modifier on your item, which also adds on top of the Essence crafting to enable even more useful modifiers per item in the campaign and beyond. Patch 0.3 has brought a lot of determinism to crafting, and this determinism continues deep into the endgame, which is where the many new crafting tools come together to create a crafting experience which may even rival the power of crafting in PoE1. You can very often deterministically...
It is probably still not 100% there, but it is maybe 80% there, you know, which is crazy.
Craft extremely powerful endgame items from scratch, using various combinations of the new crafting systems. And this change to Path of Exile 2 crafting has massively increased player power at any given stage of progression. Whether you're in Act 2 or Tier 5 maps or fighting the Uber Arbiter boss, you have access to much more powerful items as a result of all of these new crafting options. And sure, you could make the argument that patch 0.3 is an outlier because access to Abyss crafting will be much more limited in patch 0.4 and beyond, once Abyss is no longer in every zone.
Exactly, and they are going to probably, what they always do when they make something core, it is not a one-to-one from when it was a league. They will tweak it. They will modify it to be able to make it core.
And I think that's a fair point to make. However, I'd argue that Abyss was only the first League addition to crafting, and it won't be the last. Over time, we're likely to get more and more crafting tools added into the game by the introduction of new League mechanics. For example, one crafting tool that many players are asking for right now is resistance swapping, akin to PoE1's harvest crafts. And this is a feature that
I would really like that, by the way, guys. Sometimes I find the perfect item for me, but it has the wrong resistance. And I am not going to move all my other pieces to fit in this piece, so I have to move on from that piece. Give me the resistance swap, brother, because I really need that shit.
could see being added to PoE2 sooner rather than later. So I believe that crafting as a whole is only going to get stronger over time, not weaker.
Yeah,
now, the next part of the Third Edict update that indicates a much faster game going forward is the League mechanic itself, the Rise of the Abyssal. You simply cannot mistake this one for being anything else. The sheer density of monsters surrounding any Abyss encounter is insane compared to a lot of the other gameplay you're experiencing at the time. Not to mention the huge amount of monsters that flood onto your screen once the Abyss actually opens up. And even beyond that, the stronger Abyssal monsters are fast. They move fast, they deal a lot of damage, and there's just no way.
The problem with the Abyss monsters, in my opinion, yes, the too many mobs, the fast monsters or whatever. Yes, this is what the game became, as we are talking about in here, right? This is what the game is. They want a lot of monsters. They want the mobs to hunt you down, right? But I don't have really a big problem with that, but I do have a big problem with the Abyss things, and it is that there are a lot of shit that damages you that is on the floor and you can't see it. The generation, undead explosions, bullshit that they throw on the floor, flame that comes out of the floor. There is a lot of shit, gas, clouds, bullshit, and you don't see what the fuck is happening. And then you die out of nowhere. And that is fucking bullshit. And let's forget about the performance. Even if the performance was perfect, what I am saying will still be the case.
You can have this ideal scenario of being able to strategically fight these types of monsters utilizing ability combos and good movement when there are just tons of monsters on your screen at once. The more tactical gameplay that we've been used to seeing in demonstrations just doesn't work in this setting. And that brings us on to another topic, game balance. Because if anything, the current balance of the game is the largest indicator of all. GGG have had...
That is what I told you earlier. Right now, you don't define the build by if it can kill the thing. It is how fast can it do it, you know?
Had two big patches now since the initial early access launch. Two opportunities to balance the game in one direction or the other. And especially in patch 0.3, the balance has only gone one way, and that's the way of player power going up. Way up, in fact. Players are stronger than ever before in the current update, and as previously mentioned...
And they knew... Well, he's going to talk about it, because he said, and they previously mentioned, and yes, they knew this was going to happen, by the way, because in the day they did the interview where Jonathan and Mark sit down with CDD, they talk about this. CDD asked them, like, you are giving us a lot of power, aren't you afraid that we are going to trivialize the game? And they said, let's people break the game right now and we will see what we will do later, you know. But they knew that we were going to destroy the game because they are buffing us, but not buffing the game itself. So it was obvious we were going to destroy everything, you know.
This does have a lot to do with the power of the new crafting systems, but there's also skill balance too. The state of skill balance in patch 0.3 is wild. I discussed this in my last video on the dominance of the Deadeye in the current update, but it's not just the strongest builds that are deleting bosses, and it's not just in the endgame either. This is happening on many different archetypes, and it's happening in the campaign pretty much from the get-go. Players are destroying the Rust King in a few hits with throwaway gear, for example. That's the second or third zone into the game, and you're already steamrolling bosses. Grenades and bow skills just absolutely melt bosses before they can do any mechanics. Now, I would say that the game balance is broken due to this, but I'm not so sure about that.
Dude, what is that?
Before, this is the second opportunity that GGG have had to make a pass on skill balance, to adjust for other increments to player power. but it appears that they're content with the current balance. Perhaps they want experienced players to be able to face roll the campaign content if they know what to do with skill gems and support gems and the likes. And that's a great segue to another massive change this patch that has also added to a faster paced game overall. The support gem changes, not just being able to use multiple of the same support gems, but also the addition of support gem tiering, many of which were direct power buffs to existing support gems in 0.2 and prior. And also on top of that, we have the new lineage support gems, some of which are exceptionally powerful and build-defining choices. The unlocking of the support gem limit was a wild change that I would have never seen coming. In regards to skill balance and what exactly skills actually do, it felt like many of the design decisions for skill balance have been based around the fact of the support gem restriction. A great example of that is grenades. Being able to socket multi-shot support into several of the early game grenade skills is just absurd levels of power creep. But that's just one example. There are countless other examples that just abuse the change to this system. And whilst I'm a big fan of having more freedom to utilize any support gem anywhere I want, I think this is a major contributing factor to the current balance of the game feeling so out of place. Now, I do want to close out this video by stating that I'm not opposed to the direction PoE2 is going in. In fact, I've easily had more fun playing the game in this patch than I did in 0.1 or 0.2. But I still wanted to make this video as I feel 0.3 has been a real turning point in the direction of Path of Exile 2, and it seems like the course has been set from now going forward. I would say that overall, I'd prefer PoE2 to be a distinctly different game from PoE1, because ultimately I feel that's why they made a separate game in the first place.
I've been saying this for the longest time, and now that I am going every 2 months back and forth, I don't want them to be the same, because then if they are exactly the same, then you get burned out. You have to make them different enough that you feel that you are swapping to a different game each time the game changes, right? I think that right now, even with the speed that we have right now, they still feel different. But if the trajectory continues and continues and continues, they can become too samey at some point. I hope that doesn't happen, because I want to for it to keep being refreshing every time you swap from game to game, right? Like, I feel that if I started to play PoE1 tomorrow, I will feel the difference, right? But if they get too similar, maybe I won't. And I want it to feel different.
But at the same time, I do enjoy PoE1, so I'll also enjoy PoE2 if it's going to end up being much of the same game
I have said
in the
this
years
before.
to come. Let me know what you guys think about this topic in the comments.
In worst case scenario, I have said this before, worst case scenario, if PoE2 becomes PoE1, not a big deal. PoE1 is really fucking good, right? But it will be cooler to have two different things that are really good.
Comments below. Thanks for watching this video, and as always, stay tuned and stay safe.
Awesome video, Dreamcore, brother. I agree with a lot of what you said in here. Still, he didn't see it the same as me regarding the smooth curve of the vision in the start and the end, because he also made the point that even in the campaign with no gear, you can, because of balance, destroy stuff. But again, yes, that is more of a balance problem, right? I don't know if that is necessarily a reflection of the vision, but I do agree with 95% of what he said in here. I just wanted for him to agree with me to validate myself. But awesome video, brother. Thank you very much, dude. What do you guys think? Am I right? Am I wrong? Am I a clown? Am I a genius? Let me know everything in the comments below. I love reading comments even when they don't agree with me. Also, remember to like the video, to subscribe to the channel, all that cool stuff. Guys, thanks for being here. You guys are awesome. God bless ya. And remember, don't be afraid ever, because this is just a ride.